evening, viewers. Welcome to another episode of COVIDCASTJA. We're at episode 50. Can you imagine? So today is our golden episode, or Jubilee episode at 50. So when we get to 50, we have to start a series that several of our viewers have been asking, when are we going to be talking about the creative industries? When are we going to be talking about entertainment? When are we going to talk about events? Well, tonight we start the series. So beg you, please, don't keep it a secret. Call up your friend, send them a message, send them a link right now, because this is an episode that cannot be missed. Today, we're talking reopening the entertainment industry. And these episodes of COVIDcast are brought to you by our sponsors, NCB Group, the JMMB Group. COVIDcast is part of the offerings of the private sector organization of Jamaica, committed to serving our micro, small, and medium enterprises and helping businesses survive, thrive, recover, regroup through COVID and beyond. So, if tonight is your first night watching an episode of COVIDcast, though, you're saying to yourself, it's 50 episodes that you've had. Yes, tonight is episode 50. So you have missed 49 episodes. I know you're wondering, where do I find these episodes? Well, please visit our YouTube page. You can go to our Facebook page. You can also go to smallbusinessportal.com. Write that down, smallbusinessportal.com, because you can also find on smallbusinessportal.com the memos that are created to support our episodes. Please also join our email group. Email us at sme@psoj.org so that you can stay informed with COVIDcastJA. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have two powerhouses. Scott Dunn, Managing Director of Dream Entertainment, and Delano, Forbes CEO and Creative Director of Phase 3 Productions. So our first guest, we're going to have a lead off. So the early juggling is with Scott Dunn. Scott is the Managing Director of Dream Entertainment, the company behind Jamaica's largest and most impactful music festivals, Dream Weekend, and the country's biggest carnival mass band, Exodus Carnival. Combined, Dream Weekend and Exodus Carnival contribute significantly to Jamaica's economy each year, and Dream Entertainment is widely considered as the leader in Jamaica's event tourism industry. Prior to following his dream, though, Scott spent 11 years as an insurance executive in Jamaica and a reinsurance broker in London. He has a BA from the University of South Florida and a diploma in insurance from the Chartered Insurance Institute in London. Scott, thank you for joining us this evening. And I see some of our viewers quite excited. Mags, good evening. Sandra, present. I see you. Wendell, Dr. Smith, Alex, I see you. Evening, good evening. And I see Dre Clean Meds. Yes, Dre, I see you. Scott, thank you for taking time to join us for episode 50, which is our golden episode. So you are right for this episode. Now, we were talking and we were talking backstage earlier that we speak very broadly of this reopening of the entertainment industry, but that it is not the entertainment industry that is closed, because it is much broader than just events. Tell us, you kind of make that differentiation.
Right.
I think that differentiation.
And I think even within government and parliament is half repeated, about the entertainment industry. What's actually closed is the events industry, which obviously is a huge part of the entertainment industry as a whole. But obviously, entertainment involves stuff like music production, which is still happening, film production, different stuff that theater stuff that might be operating to a certain level, but really within the entertainment industry, what hasn't operated and that's now 14 months is the event industry, which is essentially the lifeblood of my business, Dream Entertainment, and so many other people that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 26 years, 27 years, something like that, that I've been in the events industry. So, a lot of our suppliers that we work with is people that have grown up in the industry with. So to see everybody really suffering through the last 4 months is really been heartbreaking for me, to say the least.
So I think, because you just mentioned suppliers, when we talk about this events industry, can you give us a description of the kind of businesses that are involved in this events industry?
Right. So obviously you have event owners like ourselves, which can vary in scale. So that will go anything from festival owners, and I can give you an idea in terms of the economic activity of that, because the government did a study last year, June, that was published, and they factored the entertainment, cultural and creative industries as having economic activity of $84.1 billion a year. So just to give you an idea of how big events play into that, within that, they figure that the 15 largest festivals in Jamaica are worth $21.5 billion. So literally 25% of the total economic activity of entertainment, sports, creative culture. 15 large festivals make that up. The biggest of those festivals being Carnival in Jamaica, which Exodus being the biggest player, and the second biggest is Dream Weekend. So understand very clearly that our company has this huge, those two events alone is about $9 billion worth of economic impact. Other events in that top 15 will be people like Reggae Sumfest, Rebel Salute, Boys and Girls Champs, Sigma Run, Reggae Marathon. Well, I said those events alone are worth 20-odd billion. Now, other people within the events industry, would be everything from small event owners, people that doing a typical little 500 to 1,000 people type events. It'd be people that have round robins, which, you're talking about tens of thousands of round robins that happen in Jamaica. And then now all the people who serve these events, so everything now from bar service companies, people like Barcode, who I know have laid off something like 700 bartenders over the last 14 months. So again, you understand the impact that this lockdown has. It'll be people, production companies, so people that do stage, sound, lighting, people like Main Event, Starlight, people who do like screens for us, film production within our events like Phase 3. We'll be talking with Delano soon. You're talking about DJs, sound system owners, bottle girls, which people who don't even, in the events industry, don't even know some of these professions, bouncers, and then even people who are not directly related to events. So people like, again, people selling pan chicken, people selling peanuts, people selling cigarette and ganja in the events. You're talking about hairdressers, have been affected significantly, nail techs, without events, people who own clothing stores. It's so many people that are affected when events aren't happening, It's not really, people think of it a lot as the event owners and the DJs predominantly, but it's really a lot wider than that. There's electricians that we use at these events, plumbers, so many things. Our events that we do in the grill, we have one event alone where we hire 70 lifeguards, event that we do at Cool Runnings Water Park. So we never think about the event industry hiring 70 lifeguards,
So because I think sometimes when as you say, when we think of the events industry, we're not seeing that broader scale of what is the events industry. But Scott, you have a background in insurance and looking at risks. And so on the one hand, the events industry is now very well respected because we do understand its economic impact. But take us back a little bit, and even as you are looking forward, because when you look at the risk for businesses, COVID-19, we think about hurricane, say place of flooding, but we're not thinking of worldwide, any kind of global pandemic. When you think of risk now in that broader sense, what have some of the significant learnings been for business owners about assessing risk during COVID?
You know, and it's still very difficult. I won't say that we've figured it out, because I think what's been most difficult about COVID is that there's this moving target. So it's not like you have a kind of end in sight. And, you know, again, as you said, with like a hurricane or earthquake, you can kind of have a good estimate of how long it will take to rebuild the country, rebuild, you know, the infrastructure, power lines down, that kind of stuff. With COVID, and, you know, I remind people is that when COVID got here in March, so I give you an example. Exodus Carnival was supposed to be in April that year. We postponed Carnival till October, being overly cautious, like because nobody thought that COVID would still be around in October. If you remember, if you think back to March 2020, what we were being told is that, oh, COVID got to China in December. It looks like it's disappearing in China. It's like a 3-month cycle. By the summer, we're still, at that time, we're still talking about when it gets hot, that COVID is going to go away. Things like that were still being said. You know, so we were literally like thinking, okay, by summer this will be gone, but let's play it safe and postpone all the way till October. Fast forward till now, April 2021, and we're actually in a much worse situation than we were in April 2020. I mean, in retrospect, we probably could have had the carnival, because I don't even know if we had 20 active cases on the island in April 2020. So it maybe would have made sense to have had it in retrospect. But I guess at that point, you know, everybody was, you know, very cautious. You know, that balance between, as the Prime Minister put it all the time, between lives and livelihood was strongly weighed towards lives at the time. But I say, in terms of the learnings, you know, be honest, I would only say that like literally anything can happen. So maybe in terms of having some kind of reserve funds, and again, that's easier said than done, particularly for small businesses, because again, I think we probably had more reserve funds than most, but 14 months in, that's been wiped out many times over. We're now, you know, with significant debt 14 months in. That being said, we're the only industry that has really had to be locked out for 14 months. Obviously, many types of businesses are seeing less business, but they haven't been totally locked out of being able to do business. So at least they have some kind of activity happening.
And viewers, please send in your comments. We are talking about the reopening of what we should be saying is the events industry. I see Alex mentions that entertainers are considered to be suppliers, the decorators. Selena says, most important is that we encourage those in the entertainment industry to get their COVID vaccine. Then over time, the industry can be opened. Selena also says, encourage those under the radar to become formalized, register their businesses so that they can access some of the benefits of government. Thank you for that point, Selena. Now, Scott, you have been very active in advocating for the reopening of the events industry. Can you tell us some of the things you have been advocating for, and what has the response been? Chin Scott says, look at Florida and Atlanta. They have been operating this whole time. There is no pandemic. Continue sending in those comments, viewers.
Right. So, I mean, in January, out of a lot of frustration, but something that was well thought out, I wrote an open letter to the government that was published in both the Gleaner and Observer, and, you know, got a lot of traction on social media as well. And the main thing I was asking for at that time was some kind of measured reopening of the industry. That's something I still think is possible. But in addition to that, I think right now, with 14 months of no activity, which I said, again, the government has decided, you know, the Prime Minister constantly speaks about balancing lives and livelihoods. For our industry, for the events industry, he has decided that livelihood doesn't matter. That's my take on it in terms of, if you lock down, there's no other industry in this country that the government would dare to lock down for 14 months without providing some financial assistance. They could never look at tourism and say that. They couldn't look at manufacturing and say that. They couldn't look at construction and say that. right? So,
but the Prime Minister has recently announced a fund.
right, but I'll tell you a little something about that. In April, I checked back because I know it's something I've heard before. So I checked back and I looked up and I see news articles from April 2020 when Minister Grange announced that there would be a fund for the creative industries. I know for certain that was repeated by other ministers throughout the year and early into this year. I even heard one minister mention that he believed that the funds had been allocated and dispersed. Well, to my knowledge, no money has been dispersed within the event industry. I don't know what has been allocated, but it appears, being that the Prime Minister is saying last week that discussions need to be had for that, it appears that nothing has been allocated. But I believe it's something that's essential right now. It's an industry that I said that's worth $84 billion to this country. And a lot of the big players in this industry and the small ones are literally on their face right now. So if the government doesn't see fit to invest in the industry to be able to earn that $84 billion, over, let's say perpetuity. I can never say that word. Can you say that word for me, Rochelle?
Perpetuity.
Thank you. Forever and ever, all right? This $84 billion and more can be coming into the country. And all the government really needs to do is make a one-off investment to say, hey, we understand that you guys have not operated for 14 months. You still have staff to pay, still have rent to pay, still have utilities to pay. There's a lot of expenses that particularly the bigger players are, still have to deal with. Here's some money. Keep it going, because we need, if it's felt like they believe that events should not be open at any kind of scale whatsoever, then that's certainly something that needs to be done. But I believe, based on things that I think operate in almost parallel with the events industry, there's nothing I would want the government to do for us that's not being done inside hotels now, that's not being done inside restaurants now. So I'm not asking for something that's way out there. You know?
I actually want to get to Scott. When you say a measured reopening, and let me look at some of the comments. Right. Dre says the vaccine will help us to rebound. Kathleen, thanks you for the open letter. Hi, Carol. Carol Beckford says, as the vaccination program has started, we've got to phase the reopening. Start with low risk to high risk. Smaller events in numbers will be expensive, but it has to be gradual. Now, when you are speaking of this measured reopening, and even before we get there, just on the business end, because we have a lot of suppliers, etc., who are online watching. From where you are sitting at this time, persons would have, even with the anticipation of reopening in August of last year, when we had that kind of phased reopening, started probably stocking up and so again. And now we're not quite certain what happens. From where you sit in business, what is some of the advice, before we get into those measures, that you would be saying to them? Should they be selling off their inventory? What should they be trying to, we talk about pivoting. What should they be thinking of doing that? And what is some of the advice you would give to them?
Well, I say the reality is, and I say we're in that same boat now, is that if the government don't give you an inch, there's really nothing that you can do. So honestly, one of the biggest things that you can maybe do is advocate and to be very loud about it. I think what's happening right now is a lot of people are suffering in silence.
Okay.
I know that Dream Entertainment isn't the only company suffering. I know I'm not the only person in the events industry, but maybe I've been one of the loudest. The reality is a lot of people are feeling it, but are keeping quiet. In terms of pivoting, I say you can, pivot however you can, but the reality is, there isn't much out there for events professionals right now. There's, again, some of the stuff that Delano would have expertise in terms of online type events, but the reality is there's only a limited amount, and there are obviously people who have, more expertise in that. So, a Dream Entertainment trying to pivot into that isn't necessarily going to see a lot of traction. Other thing is, we also do work for corporate clients, similar to, again, a pastry or a main event or a Starlight or whoever. But the reality is that pretty much everybody in corporate has cut back on what they're doing as well, because they can't do events either. So that's what people miss. You know, they're thinking it's just parties, but it's about sometimes little small corporate gatherings. Those can't even happen. I mean, you could have a huge parking lot at the office and want to have a gathering of 20 people, and that's illegal right now. But there's so many places that you gather around Jamaica where you're seeing hundreds of people gathering, apparently legally. And so it's really baffling for us in the events industry why I can't rent a big open football field and have 50 people there when I go into supermarket and bustling.
Take us through what you would consider. We are at a stage where we have had over 700 deaths. The numbers are significant. Several persons have been hospitalized, but we also have the vaccine, so more people are being vaccinated. From where you sit, what would you suggest as that 5-point plan for that measured reopening of the industry?
Before I get into that, two things I want to say quickly. So one, I want to let people understand that this want to reopen is not about not being sympathetic to people that are suffering from COVID. I know people personally who have died from COVID. I know people who have been very, very sick from COVID. It's not something I'm not conscious. It's not like I'm trying to be reckless. So that I want people to understand first and foremost. I think there's a perception by some people that people in the events industry want to party in a pandemic. They want this big free for all. So that's, first of all, that's not what I advocated. Secondly, I just want to talk about the vaccine quickly because I'm seeing a couple of people have brought that up.
Yes.
People need to understand that Jamaica is on a path to what I believe we are scheduled to be at March or April next year before we get to like 70% vaccination. And now the Minister of Health has clearly said that we're going to be behind. Right now we're behind on that because vaccines are being hoarded. So if you're waiting on the vaccines to reopen events industry, there will be no events industry left because that's going to be a year before we get anywhere significant with vaccines. Now, possibly before that, we might be able to you will have some people that are vaccinated, and we might be able to have vaccinated people only events. So there might be a small subsector, but in terms of a wide reopening, that won't happen anytime soon. In terms of a plan, and again, where the frustration that we have here, Kamal Banke, who is chairman of Dream Entertainment, and who is also chairman of Sports and Entertainment in the Linkages Council, which sits within the Ministry of Tourism, has submitted plans, on more than one occasion for the reopening of the industry. He was the kind of person that was front and center to the short reopening in the summer. And again, early into this year, spent a lot of time working on a plan together with the Ministry of Health, working on that plan together. The plan has been submitted to Ministry of Health. It has been submitted to the Ministry of Entertainment, Culture, Minister Grange's ministry, and is waiting for the Minister of Local Government to sign off on this agreement. So essentially, from my understanding, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Entertainment was fine with this proposal, and its local government basically to sign off on this proposal. This has been, we've been waiting on this since February. Again, we're almost in May right now.
What are some of the
it's just stuck. The communication has just gone dead, and we're not hearing any responses. So I can tell you some of the things how this proposal works. Essentially, I believe it's a very easy kind of way of let's call it like a scoring system. So it's 17 questions with all yes and no answers. And based on your answer, you either will add points or minus points. Based on the amount of points you get, you might be allowed to have an event with up to say 50 people, or you can have an event up to 200 people, or potentially even an event of up to 500 people. Now, to get to 500 people, things that you'd have to answer yes to would include stuff like everybody at the event would have to do a rapid antigen test on entry to the event. So again, remember right now we have rapid antigen tests here in Jamaica that 10, 15 minutes you get in results. I've done them repeatedly, right? So you literally could process people on entering an event, get a positive test, you continue to enter, you get a negative, you continue to enter, you're positive, you have to head back to your car and head home, right? Right now, we're gathering in many places, and we have no idea who's positive from who's negative. So this, in my mind, this is a lot safer than most of our general activities. Another thing you'd have to answer yes to is having a monitor there, which would be somebody that the Ministry of Health would provide at the cost of the event owner. So an event monitor there makes, obviously you're going to have stuff like sanitization stations, temperature checks, oversized venues would be something very important. So a venue that we would normally have 5,000 people in is a venue that you put in 200-300 people in, which is something similar to what we would have done in the summer, because what we did in the summer worked. We had people that came, monitored the events, said that protocols were followed, and out of nowhere, we hear there's a spike, and apparently the event industry is to blame. When the politicians clearly want to forget that they were in the middle of a campaign that all of us could see on TV and on social media with thousands of people gathering in the streets, many times without masks, and somehow that wasn't to blame for the spike in the summer, but it was the events industry that was only allowed to have 280 people at any event, including staff at oversized venues. So that one kind of baffled me.
At oversized venues, and viewers, please continue sending your comments. I'm going to read some of them. I'm seeing some interesting comments coming in. But when we talk about having smaller events in like large venues, what is the economics of that? Will that actually...
Oh, the economics of it. Well, I said the logic of it is around social distancing. And the reality is, so people will say, okay, you're going to have an event, let's say somewhere that I said can hold 5,000 people, you put 300 people in that space. People are not going to, not everybody is going to be 10 feet apart. But a group of people that come together are obviously going to stay together. But those same group of people would have come in the same car, or those group of people, if they're not coming to the event, they would have gone to a restaurant together, or they would have gathered in somebody's house together. So people have to understand that it's not like people aren't gathering in society anyway at all. What it does is it provides you with an opportunity that if you want to be by yourself or you want to be with just one other person, you have more than enough space to find within the venue to do that. The economics of it now, that again, it's not necessarily ideal in terms of that, you know, not every event is going to be profitable like that. But again, the events industry is a high risk industry anyway, where people are used to ups and downs of it. It's for us to be creative and try to figure out how it can be done economically. We did 3 events in the 5-week window in the summer. Those events were marginally profitable, but they were profitable. It can be done. And I said, what we just want is an opportunity to do something. You know, my feeling is that the government can't just tell us, no, you're not allowed to operate. Every other industry, the government gives guidelines and protocols to operate. Why are we the only industry that's being singled out that no, you can't operate at all? I mean, our livelihoods don't matter. We mustn't earn a living. We shouldn't be able to pay our rent and mortgage and our utilities like everybody else.
What about discussions regarding more formalization in the industry? And I see somebody saying, what about advocacy around tax amnesties for businesses in the event industry?
Well, I can speak to tax amnesty. I don't think anybody in the event industry made any money last year, so nobody's worried about taxes right now because nobody's profitable right now. But certainly going forward, I mean, that could be something that could be looked at, but it doesn't immediate needs right now. So it's one thing to say, oh, I'll get a tax amnesty in 2022 or 2023 when things back up and running, but I need things to be back up and running. And right now, many of us are in a position where we won't be able to be back up and running. And I said, you take a business like Dream Entertainment, which I said, I'm not saying it. The government has said that our business essentially contributes $9 billion a year to the economy. Why would the government take a chance of making our business go under? That's just bad business. You know, that's just any savvy investor would say, hey, give this industry some money because we earn so much off it. Not to mention the the events industry has done and the entertainment industry at large for brand Jamaica. So, you know, so, I mean, you know, I mean, not to downplay any other industry, but I mean, construction, manufacturing, what has that done for the Jamaican brand globally? Like what entertainment and creatives have done and sporting people have done for our brand. So we're there, you know, and I say, to me, tourism is huge. We are a big player in tourism because we essentially do tourism events. But we're, you know, the government is there trying to protect tourism and not understanding that this is a big part of the tourism product as well. You know, tourists don't just come here for, you know, sun, sand, and sea. Like, they come here for our culture. And we've locked off our culture for the last 14 months from locals as well as foreigners.
Yeah, and I see Keanu Ling saying exactly brand Jamaica. I've seen some comments where persons are asking about what about the things like a vaccine passport? Is that something that you would be advocating for? Celine, vaccine, no entry.
I mean, again, I'm not really sure. And globally, it's a little curious to me because I see it's not just Jamaica where it's happening, but everybody that's getting these little cartridge paper for the vaccine thing. Practically speaking, I don't know how that's going to work when people try to decide that you're going to need to show vaccination to get in anywhere. Because anybody who's gone and gotten their vaccine, I mean, if there's anything that would be easy for somebody to counterfeit, is a vaccine card. So I don't, you know, I'm not really confident that that's the solution. I don't know if there's more going to be done, as I said, to provide the actual vaccine passports that use up technology. But right now, and I say it's not just Jamaica. I've seen it like, you know, people in the States, in Europe, everybody's just getting this little piece of cartridge paper to say that they have.
But say, so whether or not it's a nice laminated card or a piece of cartridge paper, it is one of the strategies that's being implemented in other countries. I mean, we see how ways to go with vaccinations. In terms of when we are looking at you've gone overseas with some of your events. What are the strategies that you've seen other countries implement that these events, you're able to stage these events? And is there any data to show that they are any more likely to be super spreader?
Well, again, it's one of those things where there's this rhetoric going on about events and super spreader. All of us watch the news. All of us pay attention to social media. Can somebody point out one major event globally that has happened in the last year that has been a super spreader? I challenge anybody to do that. The government here in Jamaica talks about it. I feel like every week in Parliament, they're talking about parties and events as like the enemy of the state. And when we all know that it's in office spaces that all the super spreader events in Jamaica have happened. With all the illegal events that happening, nobody can even point to an illegal event and say, oh, this illegal event keeping this constituency, and there was 20 cases coming out of that. It's coming out of indoor spaces, and the science tells us that indoor spaces are a lot more dangerous than outdoor spaces. So, you know, if it's just I see working in other countries is, and I say you can have varying ends of the spectrum. So I see people commenting, you know, about places like Florida, Atlanta, Mexico. Those places have literally taken an attitude as like, yo, we're opening our economies. You know, events are a significant part of our economies, and we're going to make that happen. That has actually led to, you know, a city like Miami, and there's lots of data on that actually growing over this period in terms of their economy, because a lot of big companies have moved to Miami during the pandemic just because of lifestyle, just because the people who run these companies and work in these companies don't want to be locked into a city that has been locked down for the last year. So companies are moving to Miami just for lifestyle for their employees and their owners. So that's one thing that has really helped that we've seen in Miami, as well as I don't see anything where, you know, Miami, again, with Florida as a whole, Georgia, Texas, Mexico are really showing any significant more numbers than anywhere else. That being said, I'm not advocating for a wholesale opening and, hey, let's just start having events with thousands of people again. I think a more measured approach is a little bit better. You know, again, using oversized venues, using, temperature checks, using, proper sanitization,
Testing.
right, rapid testing, these
Yeah.
type of things. I think you can do it in a very safe and practical way. They've done pretty big festivals, events with over 1,000 people in Europe using antigen tests, and they've worked perfectly. They've done essentially exit testing, testing people 7-8 days after the event, and they found where there's no positive cases coming out of some of these events. So it can be done, and it must be safer to have an event where everybody's tested coming in than to do the regular stuff that you're doing every day, than to go into half retreat, to get on a bus, to go into the supermarket, to go to a hotel, to go to a restaurant now where you have no idea who is positive from who is negative, to be in a space where everybody's tested and you can still, be safe in there. You can still wear masks, you can still, sanitize, you can still social distance even after testing.
Yeah. And Scott, I'm seeing, of course, the comments are blowing up. Keep those comments going. Ricardo says yes to the temperature checks, yes to oversized venues. Carol Beckford says nothing will return as before March 2020. We have to move forward. Chin Scott says Jamaica is far from unruly and undisciplined. Jamaica has been very compliant and disciplined with listening to their government. Jamaica is the only country that has not had formal protest fighting for their rights during all of.
Let me jump on that comment, because that is something that's very near and dear to me. People say that all the time, that, things not gonna work in Jamaica because we're unruly and we don't know how to follow rules. Yes, it's not true. The problem in Jamaica right now is enforcement, right? Everywhere else in the world, when rules are put down and protocols are put down, there's also enforcement for those things. And the reason why people follow the rules is because people don't want to go to jail for breaking the rules, or people don't want to get fined for breaking the rules because they know it's highly likely to happen if they do it. Right now in Jamaica, again, the events industry and us as formal players who want to do the right thing are being told not to do it. But again, everybody knows there's illegal events happening every single night in Jamaica. One, events aren't allowed to happen. Two, we're in the midst of a curfew. But the government is really doing nothing about stopping it. And then the same government whose responsibility is to enforce these protocols are coming into parliament and making public statements about people not following the rules and having illegal parties. Well, if you know about illegal parties, you can lock them down.
Setting the guidelines, so determining what is measured opening, setting the guidelines and the enforcement around those guidelines and rules. And Simone Bannon says, if any industry can get creative, it's the entertainment industry. I've seen multiple skyboxes, lounges, platforms. So you mix with only those you choose to do so with. The government should reopen the space for them to get creative. Selena, Scott, if people die, your business will be affected. Large gatherings impacts the spread of COVID. South Beach, Miami had their spring breakers. What was the results? Florida has one of the highest COVID cases in the USA. So, and I've been seeing some comments about virtual events. We're going to leave those virtual comments and questions for Delano. But Scott, we're going to have you back on shortly. Now, for this particular segment, you kind of just summarized a moment ago, what are the key elements for us moving forward? That there really is you haven't seen the data to suggest that the events themselves are a greater super spreader than going into the office. So at this stage, what nugget would you leave our viewers with as we welcome our next viewer, our next presenter? You have a comeback because the comment them is up.
Yeah, I said there's two things that's very important to us. One, I said some kind of measured reopening. I said there is already a document that's with the government right now. We're just waiting at least a response to the document. So whether they're going to say no, this does not work, or yes, this can work, or change this, but silence is not okay.
Silence.
We deserve some respect. This has been in since February, so we want to know what the government's views are on this reopening protocol document. And two is that you've locked down an entire industry for 14 months. People, it's not fun and games. It's people earn a living from this, and it's not 1 or 2 or 100 people. It's tens of thousands of people earn a living from this industry. So you need to provide some financial assistance. You can't put people out of with no opportunity to earn for 14 months and not compensate. The government needs to make an investment and make a significant one. The industry is worth $84 billion. I think at the very least, 1% of that, $840 million, the government needs to find that and give that to the industry.
Yeah. And Scott, certainly you are not suffering in silence, and this advocacy, so I think we can add advocacy certainly to your profile, because this has been, and in fact, Kiana Ling just said, great advocacy and suggestions for the reopening. Sir Scott, I support measured reopening. Again, the government is quick to speak to Brand Jamaica and denies the sector, which brings some of the greatest support. Catherine says we need to get back to work. We have to live too. And I'm even seeing our viewers suggesting some of the spaces that we can have those larger venues. I see Reese Campbell. Hey, Reese says, are we looking at smaller bespoke events where vaccines and our negative COVID test are a prerequisite? That's in fact one of the things that you put forward, Scott. So viewers, not leave, because Scott is coming back again. And right now we are going to welcome, thank you so much, Scott, for blowing up the internet. And this welcome Delano Forbes, who is CEO and Creative Director of Phase 3 Production. So the breadth and depth of Richard Delano Forbes Jr.'s knowledge of production and the television industry in general has been garnered over his, I booked a while ago because I think this over 30 years. He grew up in the family business Phase 3 Productions, for which he is now co-owner and CEO. He holds a BFA from NYU Film School and an MBA with honors from the Florida International University. He understands film, television, and the business of digital content production. Forbes has worked across the USA and the Caribbean producing live multi-camera sports and entertainment events, among other streaming and TV-related projects. His multi-skilled training and deep experience have allowed him to serve in several different capacities. Delano, thank you and welcome to our show.
Well, thank you. Good night, Michelle. Thank you.
So, Delano, you heard some of the commentary that Scott has made. You are in the focus a little more on the event promotion side of the business, but you are also in, your business is affected in various segments of how your business operates. Can you tell us a little bit more about the areas that Phase 3 operates and what has been your experience through COVID thus far?
Okay. All right. So essentially, Rochelle, I mean, Scott made mention to it earlier. Like, we are one of those key players in the whole ecosystem, of the entertainment and event space. A good amount of our business actually is based, our revenue is based on a lot of those physical events. Pretty much all of those, Dream Entertainment is a client of us. Most of those large festivals that you mentioned earlier are clients of ours as well. And pretty much sporting events, Phase 3 covers large scale sporting events, etc. And pretty much when those events went away last year, we lost 90% of our revenue for a few months, It is currently, and it still is a very, very challenging time. But, for any business, I mean, we've been in business for a little while, so we did have a bit of reserve. But that said, looking at your cash flow, calling the banks, losing 90% of your revenue overnight is a tough pill for anybody, to swallow. So what makes us a little unique is, yes, we provide a lot of the inputs for the events that were mentioned, including Dream Weekend, that's big screens, whether that's LED screens or trussing or whatever type of staging, that's needed. We also, on the other side of the business, we do live production, as in content production. We do the cameras, we do the streaming, TV shows, live sporting events, that kind of thing. So again, pretty much, we have a contract for CONCACAF where we produce about 40 games in a year within the Caribbean, within the States, within Jamaica. We have done one soccer game for the past 12 months. That was a big part of our revenue. Similarly, all those festivals. But after the initial shock, we started to quickly try and put our thinking caps on and say, what could we kind of do? The word is pivot, but in our case, because we had a lot of experience doing live content production, we shifted a lot of our effort into trying to offer our clients solutions in this new age. I mean, even right now, this forum we're having right now, a year and a half ago would have been in the Pegasus ballroom, probably on a little stage having a chat. We wouldn't be doing, over this platform. So realizing that we kind of met with a lot of our clients, a lot of people kind of reached out to us just to figure out, like, what do we do? A lot of those same corporate companies, government agencies, like, how do we do this? How do we send this content across these various platforms, given the limitations that we currently have? And I'm glad to say at this point, we're by no means where we were, but we're not in the situation, or in the situation that we were a year ago. It's still very tough. And I mean, Scott, these are people, the party promoters, the whole industry. It's a close ecosystem. We all work together, so it's a very, very challenging time all around. In our case, though, we had to quickly shift into our tool set of live streaming, live production, and we retooled and we kind of focused our energies in that area. And for example, when our Sumfest came to us and like, hey, what does a virtual music festival look like? We would have all been watching Versus, that kind of stuff, a lot of references, and we were still able to have somewhat of a show. Nothing like what a physical show. We all miss and we all dream to go back to the way it was. But given the situation now, we're just kind of working with, with the deck of cards we currently have.
So what you are seeing now, where event production and this move to digital content, and persons have to be thinking about their digital content strategy.
Right.
When you are looking ahead, because we are seeing the events, we're seeing the AGMs happen online, and we're seeing a new ecosystem being created online. Right. Do you think that we are going to see a hybrid situation where online, so persons will now, in fact, really, they'll go to Sumfest when we reopen, but you'll still have more people logging on to the virtual events? And Simone, thank you for that question. How do you make virtual events? Because that's where I'm going. Like,
it's a very good question. All right, so in terms of the way forward, to be honest, because a lot of what you spoke about virtual AGMs, we've done a number of the blue chip companies in terms of their AGMs. And there's a lot of innovation going on in this space. I will tell persons I've never had, they're more streaming companies now than I think they've ever been, and more overnight. Like, we have never had as much competition as we currently have right now, just because a lot of players realize that is, key to the current situation. I met with, probably a week ago, we're planning a virtual AGM for obviously a publicly traded company here in Jamaica, and the persons have said, look, they're not going back. I mean, we'll have some kind of physical presence, but they like, the technology is opening up. They actually having more attendance. I mean, up to last night, we did a staff engagement event for Sagicor, that was all streamed online. And yeah, we had 2,000
that we would not necessarily have been able to attend. So all of a sudden there was this wider audience.
Online, absolutely. Online. And I mean, again, I miss going to my, it's a tough time, but for us to just kind of have to, we're working with with the current situation. The question of the business model, now, I'm not going to, it's tough. Obviously, corporate events, corporate companies pay for corporate events, as in their internal executions, that kind of stuff, as they would have done before. And to be honest, even content on a whole, TV shows, etc., are heavily dependent on sponsorship. And I think a number of physical events also, yes, you can make, obviously can make money at the gate, but your sponsorship often offsets a lot of your production. Mm-hmm. So for virtual events, it's a similar kind of model. In the case of Sumfest, I know you'd have to talk to Mr. Bogdanovich, or Down Sound Records on that investment. I know the feedback that they got was, positive all around. We were a part of recently, Rebel Salute was streamed virtually this year. We also played a role with the Jazz Festival recently. It was produced by...
Festival was awesome. Yeah.
Right. The producers, Adrian Allen and Marcy McDonald, the show producers. I know in talking to them, they had some kind of ad revenue model. So you'd have seen branding along the side, that kind of thing. Obviously, people are going to jump to, pay-per-view. We've been doing this for a little while. I mean, we've put on our own pay-per-view sporting events pre-COVID, tried to stream like national trials, champs, all of those events we have been a part of providing production services. And the pay-per-view model is a little tricky. It hasn't quite worked out yet. We have found still that allowing to stream live for free and monetizing it through sponsorship or other ways has worked out better for us. I mean, we did a show for Barris Hammond, a month or two ago, and we got very, very impressive streaming numbers, and I know the feedback from the client, Harmony House, Mr. Hammond himself and VP Records was very encouraging. But again, nobody's really figured out the in terms of monetizing the content. I think that's still a work in progress.
Yeah. And I'm glad you made that point. Reese, I'm seeing your comment. We're going to get to that, the struggles of watching the virtual events. Yeah. But you made an interesting point because, even as our viewers are, and as you say, there's so many competitors that have come out and people are building businesses now in this virtual space. Yeah. But are people willing to pay premium or any kind of reasonable price for a virtual event? You find that people are thousands will log on for free, but when you have to pay for it.
Once you add a paywall, the numbers tend to dwindle because piracy. Because I mean, nowadays, even if I pay, I can turn on my cell phone and I can restream it to IG Live. So piracy plays a big role, in terms of events. So it's monetizing is we still find that you need some level of corporate support or branding, embedded branding, that kind of thing. I mean, there are ways you can go about doing it, organically. And again, I mean, I even shout out to some. I met some guys a week ago that built out a locally built AGM platform that it seems like we may partner or do some work with for an upcoming AGM. So you have a lot of persons who are innovating in the space and building out things that otherwise probably would not have been built pre-COVID. We have our staff meetings, etc. now within the office. Funnily, we find that we're getting good engagement using technology for certain types of situations. But that said, for ourselves, we look forward to a measured, reopening, a very measured reopening. I think pretty much at this point, all of us have somebody close to us that's been deeply affected by, COVID. I had a close friend who just came out of hospital yesterday. So, we have to be safe. But yeah.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, so Reese Campbell says, I struggled watching virtual concerts over the last 6 months. How can we get more interaction with viewers and the entertainers in the virtual world? Jennifer says, no one paused Beanie and Bounty. And I see a comment too that the internet providers, Fluent Digital, need to keep up. So Delano, when you are looking at this expansion of the ecosystem in this virtual world, which is not going to go away because we've gotten more comfortable in this space now. And we are also able to generate global audience. We were always a mass consumer content. Is this now a grand opportunity for brand Jamaica to be developing content on a global scale and to become content exporters? Right.
Well, absolutely. And in a strange way, and I would actually call Beanie and Bounty versus stands out. That was, everybody was glued to their device when that was going down. Barris Hammond, if you look online right now, we have over 1 million views for our live stream, which is unique. We had over 100,000 persons watching on one platform simultaneously, YouTube, and we did have some interaction because we were putting up people at home dancing, and enjoying the content as it went out. So I mean, I know we got very, very positive feedback about, that presentation as a virtual, entertainment event. I'm sorry, shall I repeat the last part of the question?
Is this an opportunity for Brand Jamaica to be exporting more content?
Absolutely. And funnily, it's because phase 3 sits in the middle. We're big on the event side. As I said, we've literally had to shift our business back more so into production, content production. And because everything's digital and because video communication is, very effective, you just try booking a production crew now, like a good camera guy, a good lighting guy, some of these roles. There's a lot of production companies, new upstart production companies, people shooting from iPhones. I remember when a client came and told me once that this would give me a run for my money with a big production camera, and they're absolutely correct right now. So there's a heavy demand as it stands right now for content, for all kinds of content. We see online series, we see Meet the Mitchells, we see all kinds of things that have come up out of this that are very good. And another little in a roundabout way, we work a lot with different local creatives. And because of COVID, ironically, because I enjoy actually traveling, because our team travels the region and at times even goes to the States for projects. We can't travel, so we've lost that opportunity. But in a roundabout way, a lot of crews also used to come to Jamaica and do production. And we find ourselves now doing a lot more production locals that we would not normally have done, brand campaigns for big companies, government agencies, etc., that local creatives are getting some level of an opportunity because the person who would normally come here to do those things can't travel,
So the flip side is that we are seeing more businesses emerge and evolve through the pandemic, more content creation. Chin Scott says, just have real events again. So
I would, as much as I would love that, everybody knows, unfortunate, as you said, no, as much as I would love that. And pretty much most of those event promoters are friends of mine and partners, because we are a supplier into the event space, so, but it has to be, it has to be measured, as Scott has said.
Yeah. And Catherine McDonough says the entertainment industry has continued to sell Brand Jamaica through these virtual events. Omar, folks, I see that you're watching. Nina Chang Harding says our industry needs to keep up with what companies like Live Nation is presently building, and also keep abreast with how Nashville is streaming. Also look at foreign shows, example, looping on Netflix. The world wants foreign entertainment brought up close and personal. Reggae is one of the most loved foreign forms of entertainment. It just has to be produced and delivered properly. We're seeing that persons are saying too, we need to really be developing that content. What would your comment be on Nina Chang's comments? Very timely comment.
Well, yeah. I would say, Live Nation, big, in terms of live events. There have been. I can use Bears Hammond's show and Sumfest as an example of content that was produced, entertainment content that was received pretty well. And you do have a lot of local creatives right now. Industry, obviously, you talk about our local film industry. Storm is going to come top of mind. There's so many other persons doing really creative work, doing projects now that have come up for the same need in terms of just the explosion of content, Yeah.
So content is really, I remember a few years ago, even hearing one Marcia Forbes talk about content being king way before content was truly king. And content is,
and that's a parallel here.
But it's interesting that for phase 3, on the one hand, you are and have been impacted by the closure of the events industry. But you have, because of the modeling of your business and the base in production and content creation, that you are able to also morph into this virtual world.
Right.
So in terms of, I noticed that the viewers are a little like, some persons say, make we open it out, let we just bust the gate. some people are like, listen, I love the virtual thing, it's kind of cool and thing, but like Reese says, listen, when you go to Jazz and Blues and stand up for a good 6 hours, there's nothing like that feeling.
Agreed.
When you are looking in the future for this virtual model, where do you see things going in terms of Marcia Rochelle called my name and Delano says, I've heard of her.
Can't go home now, Rochelle. Yeah.
So Delano, when you are looking in the future, when you are building out your business modeling and looking at risks and where this industry and just where the future is going, what are you seeing as those golden opportunities, as those green shoots for where we are able to fill this demand for entertainment?
But again, it's a tough time. I mean, we have around 30 full-time employees and about another 50 what we call full-time freelance persons who, for a few months just working out how we could keep everybody on board, and keep, the lives versus livelihood kind of balance. So it's been very, very tough. In terms of the future, I don't think the world has changed forever as much as I would like it not to. I think, the uncertainty, it's so hard because as Scott said earlier, there are events that we planned that push till next year. I mean, we got one call. We've been focusing on parties, but we also do a lot of conferences for overseas groups, on the North Coast, the convention center, etc. We got one call for last March when I realized COVID was real. A group of almost 1,000 people, well-to-do a North American company that was having a 3-day retreat for their high net worth clients. 1,000 people. We were executing about 6 events over the weekend, and the economic impact of events like that just gone. We got a call back in September that they're on for 2021. Needless to say that a few weeks later, we heard that, look, this thing has been postponed indefinitely. So while we would want, there's no real time frame on the situation and the whole uncertainty. So we're planning on building out now for somewhat of a hybrid. The idea that these events will come back, obviously, at some point. I'm not sure of what scale, but it's also important we offer some kind of digital solution that allows a wider audience. And I guess the monetization and that kind of thing of the content, is something obviously that needs some work. So I think hybrid events is something in the future that, is going to be around for some time.
Yeah. And let me bring back on Scott Knowles. Delano says hybrid events are what we're looking at in the future. We are forever changed. Hi, Scott. Someone says you simply can't go virtual with certain events. Hi, Lissandra. Jennifer Borg says, exactly, virtual weddings now go work. Scott, we've been having this discussion about the virtual events. So we've talked about what gradual reopening could look like, the importance that we really need to be advocating. But then what about virtual events? Should we be pushing more for the virtual events? What's your take on this?
Let me give you some actual numbers behind that. And I'll use Nina's example of Live Nation. So let me show you what lockdown of events and trying to go virtual can do for a business. Live Nation is a publicly traded company. Live Nation in 2018 made a profit of $60,249,000 US. The following year, 2019, Live Nation made $69.9 million US. You know what Live Nation lost last year? $1.7 billion. $1.7 billion Live Nation lost last year. From a company that was making $60 million a year, they went in just 1 year, despite many attempts to do stuff virtually, and lost $1.7 billion. So maybe from a consumer standpoint, consumers are happy for virtual because it gives them something to look forward to. But from an event owner standpoint, it doesn't work. Where virtual works is if you say you just want to communicate, you just want to bring across an experience So you try to keep your brand alive and you want to keep an experience going, you can do virtual. Also, events that are heavily sponsor driven. So a lot of what we've seen virtually has been corporate companies doing, or people or stuff events that are heavily sponsored, where you're not trying to make a profit, you're trying to just get their brands out into the space. And I think there's an important role that virtual plays in doing that. Now the hybrid model I like, because I think, as Delano said, going forward, virtual isn't going to go away. I think you said it as well, Rushdie. This virtual side of things isn't going to go away. So what we need to find going forward is how we do that hybrid, that we can present a live experience that people can enjoy, but also for people who are not comfortable maybe getting back out into the public and want to stay at home, are very careful and cautious about COVID, as you say, have a risk management background. I understand that they can still participate virtually. But in terms of an event owner trying to make a living virtually, we're a long way from that. I don't know of anybody, including Live Nation, which is the biggest event owner in the world, being able to figure out how to monetize events. And then worse for someone like a Dream Entertainment, where our events aren't about like artists singing and live presentation like that. Our events are predominantly driven by DJs. So communicating that experience virtually doesn't work. I mean, a Barry Salmon is great in live, and Barry Salmon is great on a virtual screen. Same thing. Bounty Beanie, performances like that. You go know the biggest sound systems and the biggest DJs in the world trying to do virtual stuff and have 100 people on Instagram watching their virtual lives. Nobody wants to see, which that is a big part of our experience, as well as our events. It's really experiential. There's a lot going on within the events. Everything down to events have a smell. Like this. There's this smell of pan chicken mixed with perfume, mixed with a little bit of weed. That is like what an event in Jamaica smells like. You can't bring that across.
So that's very interesting, because there is that. Yeah. So I see. Jennifer says, yes, so many businesses have fixed costs such as maintenance and mortgage payment, loan payments. All of those expenses are still there with zero income.
Amen.
Yeah.
Virtual. Yep.
Yeah. So from where both of you stand, as we're looking at the months ahead, we're still awaiting on a response on the phased reopening of the event industry. In terms of timelines, if in what time period, if we do not start a phased reopening, you think that it is going to even take longer for the bounce back? What's this kind of bounce back time that we are looking at?
Well, from my standpoint, without an injection of capital into the industry right now, it's like a month or two away. I mean, it's as drastic as that. I said it's been 14 months. Like, name it any business, as robust, as diverse as a business might be, as prudent as people might be, and how well people plan. You name it, any business that can go 14 months with almost no income and still survive.
Yeah.
It's just not possible. And I said the government can't just keep pushing up and making promises. Like, we need to sit down now and figure this out. And we need to disperse some money to the industry quickly. And then we need to pick out some kind of reunion, whether it's 50 people or 100 people. You can't tell me it's okay for a couple of 100 people to be in a hotel or in a supermarket, but you can't have them on a big open field. I said that a million times.
Yeah. Delano, you're not.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's the measured reopening, couldn't happen any sooner. I know Champs is happening, from what I understand. So I think that will even be a good model, in terms of, I don't know exactly what the plans are and that kind of thing, but at least I guess Champs is happening, correct? Boys and Girls Champs, they've announced.
I heard that as well.
Yeah, but I don't. They haven't actually. It's still a little confusing how that model is to work. If it's just the athletes in the stadium,
Okay, the empty stadium.
Okay. Live spectators, but you remember, Champs has thousands of athletes. It's not like
Yes.
Very true.
I heard it was like about 2,100 athletes. I heard some number ended about.
But
Like,
chance to happen, there's going to be gathering of people, you know.
True.
But I think it can be done safely. It's being done all over the world. There's sporting events happening all over the world right now. You know, it's not like we're trying to invent this thing and try to figure this out. There's things that we can copy right now that are working. The NBA happened, NFL happened, IPL cricket is happening. All these things are happening all around the world. It's not like these things aren't happening. The world is figuring out how to keep events and creative industry alive. Jamaica, where disproportionate to the rest of the world, how important the creative industry is to Jamaica. And that we're not trying to figure it out, to me is absurd.
yeah, and see,
a much bigger part of Grand Jamaica than it is of 99% of countries in the world. But other countries have seen it important to say, hey, we need to figure this out, we need to have this, or we need to give you, or we need to, give some money to the industry to keep you going while you're on the sideline. Jamaica, the government just keep us on the sideline.
I'm seeing a comment here from Chin Scott. The panel is discussing reopening as if it is very complicated and one-sided, while other places like Miami have been in max attendance at major events. Igloo Cooler Party last weekend sold out, no tickets available at the gate. That is a first for them. And Sandra asked whether or not we know if there's any data to show what is the level of spread at these international meets. Very interesting. So Chin Scott is saying, just cut and go through because everywhere else is doing this. Scott, you're also saying too that while exercising caution, and you were very deliberate in emphasizing that we do need to be cautious and lives matter, but livelihood also matters. And somebody was asking, what is the proposal for the reopening? And Scott, you had set out some with the numbers, the larger venue spaces so that we are able to do the social distancing, the rapid antigen testing. Delano, do you have anything to add to that list?
In terms of measured reopening?
Yeah.
The proposal is public, Scott? I think is it public or no? What Kamal Banke had sent?
No, it's not public. It went through the Ministry of Health and the Ministry responsible for entertainment. And I say it's with Ministry of Local Government. But I honestly feel if we don't get a response soon, at least we'll have to go public and see what the public thinks about that proposal and see if they think it's a reasonable proposal. But I said it's again, to my understanding, the technocrats within Ministry of Health were okay with it. So again, people who understand the science behind these things, and so it's not just this guessing game or trying to find favoritism for anybody. We should be following the science. The people who are responsible for the science seem to have thought that it was a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the comments there. We've been having some very interesting commentary. You guys are seeing the comments. Viewers, this is the first in our series on the creative industry. Next week, we're actually going to be looking at influencers and monetizing your presence on social media. So, that cannot be missed. But as we are wrapping up tonight's episode, one of the key things that Scott has mentioned is that we cannot be silent as prevails in the industry. Delano has mentioned the innovation that has come out of the time. So I'm going to give each of these gentlemen a last word, but let me just catch some of the comments. Sandra says, Andreas Chung says, grants, tax relief. There are many different models applied internationally for how to support creatives until it is safe to reopen. Jennifer says, we also need more data on where the cases have been in Jamaica. 3 major spreads were a funeral, a church, and a call center, but no data on contract tracing has been given in a year. Chin Scott says, Miami, little to no pandemic restrictions. Why are we still talking about precautions when we have to live real time and data that there is no need for restrictions anymore? So we've had the gamut of thoughts on this matter. Scott, you had also included the importance of support to the industry, monetary support. And it's something we haven't really been talking about as a nation generally, the support for the creative industry. So Delano, let me start with you. What are your final thoughts for tonight, and what would you be leaving our viewers with?
Well, I have to applaud Scott for the advocacy. I mean, we can always have a conversation as to how to do it responsibly, but I mean, there are a lot of players in the market that have continue to be adversely affected. And I mean, these are guys who, have taken the risk, and it's not easy to be an event owner. Many times even we consider, like, do we have our own event? And it's as a supplier, because people think it's easy. It's not very easy, and it's a lot of risk involved. And, entities like Dream Entertainment, brands like Sumfest, are Brand Jamaica. A big part of why people come here is for a lot of these mentioned events. So we look forward to a reopening. We look forward to playing our role phase 3 in a new normal, as we have been doing. But everything has to be in a very measured, and safe way.
Scott, thanks a lot for that, Delano.
Right. Well, I just want to repeat something I said earlier, because I think, again, it's very important for people to understand the magnitude of what we're dealing with here. Entertainment, creative, and cultural industry worth $84.1 billion. So it's not monkey money. It's something very significant to our economy. We've been shut for 14 months. If you want to know what the events alone is a part of that, just the 15 largest events in Jamaica, the 15 biggest festivals, those alone are worth $24 billion in economic activity. So understand that it's not, we as a country are feeling it and are going to continue to feel it without the presence of events. Not to mention what it will do ultimately for the brand Jamaica, what it will do to our tourism product, so it's a very important industry. It's not just partying, the naysayers love to say. There's a lot more to it, but I say it's an industry that has been sidelined for 14 months. Industry needs support. This industry, particularly event side industry, has been built with almost no help from government. So we've built up an $84 billion industry with very little help from government. And government is going to restrict us for 14 months. I think it's only natural that the government steps in to give us some assistance now. And beyond that, again, I said there's so many things happening very similar to how events operate. Again, they use hotels and restaurants. People are there without masks. People are gathering. It can be similar protocols employed for events industry.
Yeah. Thank you both, gentlemen. I mean, a very riveting episode. Some of our viewers say it's good to know. Catherine says that it was good to know that she was not suffering alone. So these discussions are very important, and also the kind of advocacy that is necessary at this time. And we're seeing the various views. Somebody asked me, what about having a ministry representative on? We actually have a series on the cultural and creative industry over the next several weeks. So we will have government representatives on. So we're saying it needs to keep glued to COVIDCASTJA. So ladies and gentlemen, please, if your friends didn't watch this episode, you know that they need to, because they would have missed Scott Dunn, Managing Director of Dream Entertainment, Delano Forbes, CEO and Creative Director of Phase 3 Productions, as we discussed the reopening of the events industry. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we know we're going to have you back on very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
So I'm seeing Andrea Chung says, thank you. If Jamaica is to recover quickly, cultural and creative industries have to be part of that recovery. You are so right, Andrea. So we will be focused, as I mentioned before, on the cultural and creative industry. We're not going to, this industry, as somebody also mentioned, Andreen says it's a forgotten industry. And as Scott mentioned, such a significant revenue earner. As Delano talked about, the content that is being created, the the creativity of our people is renowned, but how are we going to recover? How are we going to utilize this industry to recover? So we will be talking about fashion. We're going to be talking to the influencers. We're going to be talking content. We're going to be talking film. So you cannot miss this series. So we are here every single Thursday at 7:30 p.m. We are COVIDCASTJA. We're also going to be talking about, I saw somebody mentioned IP copyright. We are going to be talking about the business of the industry. So thank you very much. Thank you for that comment, Keanu. And we are so grateful for your comments. Please keep sending them in. Tell a friend. Don't keep this program a secret. Follow us, share. Our Facebook viewers, our YouTube viewers, Twitter Nation. Thanks again. See you next week for the continuation of the series in COVIDcast, the cultural and creative industry. How do we recover? So next week, 7:30 p.m. See you again. I'm Rochelle. So you have a great idea to start a business, but you don't know where to start. We completely understand. You have a lot of questions and almost no answers. Smallbusinessportal.com is here to help. At smallbusinessportal.com, you gain access to information on loans, grants, and investment opportunities from verified financial institutions. Guess what you also get? Useful business tips, access to training. All these services combine to make your business idea into a reality. Start your journey today at smallbusinessportal.com.